Chapter 13. Still in synchronicity, the team slowly swiveled to look at Wendy, who seemed just as flustered as everyone else, her eyes darting from person to person before settling on Veronica at last. Joan stepped forward, finally dropping Brandon's hand and crossing her arms. Well? Any idea why you appeared in her vision? What vision? Wendy's formerly sultry voice had risen an octave, and she sounded like a bewildered child. I don't know what you're talking about. Veronica advanced, leaving the three newcomers crowding together in the doorway, confusion painted across their faces. I meditated with the key this morning, and you showed up in the visions I saw with my third eye. Wendy froze. Key? What key? Beth grabbed the box with the key from the table, and before anyone could stop her, she pulled it out and held it aloft. From the doorway, Joan heard gasps as her classmates saw the key and felt the curse resonating. There went the whole reason for them being here. There would be no point in testing them now. Wendy didn't gasp. Her eyes narrowed, and for a split second a sly grin flashed across her face. An instant later it was gone, and Joan found herself wondering if it had happened at all. Wendy held out her hand. May I see that? Beth hesitated, but she handed it over, her face creased in a suspicious scowl. Wendy turned it over in her hand, examining it closely. Now, I was under the impression that this was some sort of support group for people who had been cursed. But now I'm getting the idea that maybe you were all cursed together? Yeah, Brandon said. I thought I told you we were cursed when we were kids. I guess it slipped my mind. Your whole class, huh? Joan froze, her mind churning furiously. They hadn't said they were a class, and Wendy had recognized the key. This witch knew something. Had anyone else seen the look on her face? She needed to tell someone before they trusted her with too much information. Hey, Veronica, she said brightly. Your poor dog has been cooped up in the house all morning, hasn't she? What do you say you and I take her for a quick walk in the woods? Really? I thought you hated... Joan emitted a manic giggle, and her voice came out way too shrill. What? I love dogs! She struggled to modulate her voice and ended up going an octave lower than usual. Willow is just precious. She cleared her throat and finally got it right. Come on, let's go. It's getting too crowded in here anyway. Oh, sure, okay, wonderful. Joan led Veronica outside and then into the house, where Veronica collapsed onto a kitchen chair, bursting into laughter. What is your deal? Joan stared at her in shock. Veronica tried to stop laughing, but every time she looked at Joan's increasingly annoyed face, she started back up again. Finally, she calmed down, wiping tears from her eyes. Oh, I needed that. Don't quit your day job to become a spy. That was the most awkward display of nonchalance I've ever seen. But you're fantastic at code words. Never in a million years would I have suspected that the word precious would pass your lips, sweetie. Don't call me that. Veronica beamed at her. So, Wendy is clearly up to something. Did you see the look on her face when Beth showed her that key? You saw that too, huh? We better actually get Willow, though. She's sneaky. If she suspects us, she might be watching to see that we're actually walking the dog. Veronica nodded soberly and went into the guest room, emerging a moment later with Willow on a bright pink leash. As they walked across the yard and toward the woods, Joan glanced at the window and saw that Wendy was indeed watching them. She focused on keeping her face pleasant, nodding enthusiastically as Veronica chattered about Willow's grain-free diet. Finally, they reached the path that twisted through the 2 acres of woods on the back of Joan's property. There was a bench just inside the forest, carefully placed out of sight of the rest of the yard to create the illusion of being surrounded by wilderness. No one in the lab would be able to see them if they sat down there. Veronica took a seat, unhooking Willow's leash to allow her to explore. So tell me what the witch was saying before I got there. What do we know about her? Joan sat beside her and quickly ran through the little Brandon had told her, and then the events leading up to Veronica's arrival. When she'd finished, Veronica closed her eyes for a moment, sitting perfectly still, meditating or something. At least she didn't feel the need to get naked this time. Joan waited, glancing around the clearing. She really needed to get out here with a weed whacker soon. Veronica interrupted her train of thought. Wendy is Mrs. Olson's daughter. Joan jumped to her feet. What? Think about it. She didn't know that Brandon was part of a group curse, but when she found out, she said class, even though no one else had said that. She clearly recognized the key. She said she strengthened a curse placed by her mother a long time ago. And when I saw her in my vision, I thought she looked like Mrs. Olson. I still think so. I wonder why Brandon never saw it. I don't think he had Mrs. Olson on the mind when he was dating her. And she doesn't look that much like her. Oh, do you disagree? No, like you said, it's around the eyes. Yeah, now that you point all that out, it's obvious. So what are we going to do? Tricky. Veronica tapped a manicured fingernail against her lips. Joan's phone chirped, and she dug it out of her back pocket. She clicked on the text from Brandon. You better come back. Wendy's gone. Beth kicked her out. Oh, crap. What is it? Joan showed Veronica the text. Well, at least she's gone, and we can talk about her without overhearing. They started back to the lab, Willow following behind. Yes, but now we can't keep an eye on her. Who knows what she'll do with the info we just gave her? Maybe she'll remove the curse. Didn't you say that she's obsessed with Brandon? Well, sure, but she hates me, and now she probably hates Beth, too. And most people who interact with Derek for more than 2 seconds hate him. The balance is stacked against us. Joan pushed open the door to the lab, and they walked into an uncharacteristically non-argumentative conversation, leaving Willow outside in the yard. Derek waved them in without pausing in his discourse. Okay, but if Susan didn't react, then we need to discern what it is that she and Ed have in common. Therein may lie the answer to immunity or cure. Susan shrugged. Yeah, but I mean, I didn't get hit that hard by the curse on the day of, you know? Wait, Susan didn't get a jolt either? Joan asked, taking a seat on the stool. That's huge. Brandon nodded. Paul and Lily did, though. Veronica interjected. I think we need to do some damage control with Wendy before we can start dealing with this new info. She has to be Mrs. Olsen's daughter, right? Brandon gasped, his face paling. You've got to be kidding me. Makes sense to me, Ed remarked. Her mom probably got her into witchcraft to begin with. I would guess that her strengthening of the curse is what brought on Veronica and Beth's renewed symptoms, remarked Derek. She certainly recognized the key as well. I wonder if she used it as a focus. How did it end up in the antique store, then? Joan wondered. Derek waved a hand in a gesture of dismissal. Doesn't matter. What matters is that we find out whether what she's learned today can help her strengthen the curse further, or even trigger it early. Joan turned to Brandon. You better go after her. Me? I can't do that. You're the only one she might talk to. She's right, agreed Veronica. She hates the rest of us. Brandon bit his lip. Fine, but if she murders me, it's on you. Fair enough, Joan nodded. She stepped up to him and gave him a peck on the cheek. Good luck out there. Be sure to text us if you're about to be murdered. He rolled his eyes and pulled out his phone to call Wendy, hitting send as he strode out of the lab. Sadie's voice drifted in from outside. Hey, Mr. Grumpy Pants, what's eating you? There was no response, and a moment later Sadie bounded into the room. What's eating Mr. Grumpy Pants out there? Oh, you know, turns out he slept with the enemy. Or the enemy's daughter, at least, Joan replied, waving her in. Oh, well, sure. That'd get anyone's egglets in a twist. Ah! Ed pointed a triumphant finger in the air. It is a saying. But it doesn't make any sense, Joan protested. Why not? Sadie asked, setting her bag of medical supplies on the card table and shrugging out of her coat, all in one smooth motion. Egglets are the holes your shoelaces go in. Really? Sadie laughed. I always thought it had something to do with apron strings. Sadie noticed the new arrivals and hurled herself at Susan, throwing her arms around her. Hey, Susan, I haven't seen you in a million years. What's going on, girl? Oh, you know, business as usual. As Susan responded, Sadie moved on to hug Lily as well and gave Paul an enthusiastic high five. The album's almost done. You gotta hit up one of our gigs one of these days. Where are you guys playing next? Trophy room this Friday. You free? Sadie nodded vigorously. Joan and I'll be there for sure. Joan sighed inwardly. Susan's jam band sound wasn't really her cup of tea. Derek rubbed his temples as he interrupted the chit-chat. Can we please focus? You're late, Sadie, and quite a lot has happened. We won't be needing your phlebotomy services after all. Perhaps someone could catch you up, and then we can work on formulating a plan to move forward? Well, Joan began, in a nutshell, Brandon's ex is Mrs. Olsen's daughter. She's been strengthening the curse, possibly using the key, and now she hates us even more because Beth pissed her off. I didn't do anything wrong, Beth objected. Did you really want her hanging around here? Ed shook his head. No, Beth, you're right. We wouldn't have been able to get anything done if she'd stuck around. But we might have kept her in a good mood, pointed out Lily. I hope Brandon can at least distract her from going straight home and setting extra curses on us. We'll just have to trust Brandon to handle that as well as he can. Worrying about it won't help us, said Derek. What I would like to discuss now is the similarities between Ed and Susan. Why? Sadie asked. Are you two getting together? Joan sighed. Not everything is about sex, Sadie. She pouted. Well, it should be. So what is it about, then? The curse, I suppose. We're the only two who haven't had any reaction to the key so far, Ed told her. No reaction? I thought everyone was getting a jolt. Not us, said Susan. Everyone else, so far. Well, I still haven't seen it. Maybe you should test me now, Sadie suggested. No one else has died, have they? Just Beth, Joan said. Paul lifted a hand, staring at Beth. What do you mean, died? She looks fine to me. Beth and I both had extreme reactions, Veronica said. We technically died for a moment and then were revived. And you're just casually waving that key around? Lily was flabbergasted. Derek clapped his hands twice for attention. Hey, I'm not going to say it again. We need to focus. He held up a notebook. On it, he had written the names of everyone who had seen the key in 2 columns. Ed, Susan, and Wendy were in one, and everyone else in the other. He pointed to the second column. Now here are all the people who have had reactions to the key. He indicated the other side. And here are the ones who haven't. One of these was not cursed. The other 2 were. He turned to Joan. Do you have any neighbors or anyone around who isn't cursed who we could show the key to and see if they react? I'm not concerned about hooking them up to the machines at this point. I just want to make sure we can definitely correlate the curse and the key. Sadie skipped to the door and called out, Hey Marlon, Becca, get in here. Joan cocked her head. Why aren't they in school? Sadie shrugged. Becca wasn't feeling well, and I figured Marlon would probably catch it too, so why send him to school to spread it around? They can be control guinea pigs. But people have died. They could die, objected Lily, looking wildly around the room, gesturing toward Veronica and Beth in turn. Becca bounced into the lab. Die? Really? Cool. You're not going to die, Becca, Sadie assured her. Beth and Veronica just died for a moment, and their circumstances were very different from yours. What about me? Marla asked, walking in more sedately. Nope, and I'm going to do it too at the same time. Okay, cool. What do we have to do? Derek set up 3 stools in a row. The 3 of you should sit down so we can all see your reactions. He gestured to Joan and Veronica. You 2 get ready just in case we do need to resuscitate. Does anyone else know CPR? Lily raised a hand. Okay, you stand over there too. Joan grabbed the defibrillator from the table and quickly readied it for use as Veronica and Lily positioned themselves behind the stools to catch anyone if they should fall. Lily fidgeted nervously. Derek nodded to Beth. Do you have the key? She nodded and held up the box. Ready? Becca gave a perky thumbs up, and Marlon a solemn nod. Sadie grinned broadly. Beth opened the box and held up the key. Sadie gasped, drawing back. Veronica leaped to catch her, but she recovered quickly. Becca and Marlon just aimed puzzled frowns at their mother. Is something supposed to happen? Becca asked. No, honey, not for you, Sadie replied shakily. We were hoping it wouldn't affect you 2. Then why are you so pale? Marlon hopped off his seat and put a concerned arm around Sadie's shoulder. I'll be okay, Marlon. Remember how I told you guys about the crazy lady who cursed me and Auntie Joan in 1st grade? They nodded, glancing at Joan, who gave them a new version of her encouraging smile. Their mystified expressions shifted into terror. She dropped the smile. Sadie continued. Well, this is related to that. But it's good because it means we might be able to fix it before the curse comes back, okay? Okay, they chorused. Now go back outside so we can work on fixing it. The twins ran back out into the yard. Just then a text came through to Joan's phone, and she pulled it out. Branded again. I won't be back. Spending the day with Wendy. She's precious, and I think we're getting back together. Joan frowned. What the fuck? Derek spun to face her. What now? Brandon just texted me. She read them the text. Oh, hell no! Sadie jumped to her feet, ready to charge out and defend her best friend's honor. That skank is not... It's obviously fake. Veronica interrupted. He's sending us a message. Same code word you used earlier about Willow to get me to go outside with you. Brandon's in trouble.